going, and do I sound good? Can you make me sound better? I just want to be somebody else. Amen. Good morning.
Good morning.
I've got about 10 minutes in me, and we'll get out of here. Never happens. Never happens. Now, I don't have 25 pages of notes, as I found out that Jess has picked on me about. But I do have what I believe to be a short, I'm going to tell some stories, have a short message in the middle, maybe another story, and we're going to have some time of ministry, which I have begun to realize at the time of ministry, people can get anxious about, because it's sort of like, what is it going to look like? What am I going to be pulled out of my comfort zone to do? Those sort of things. But if anybody's ever experienced this response to what God is doing, and He's ever let you down, and you haven't ever felt more light after that experience with Him, I would encourage you not to have anxiety about a time of ministry, but actually an expectation of what He's going to do and the freedom that it brings, right?
Yes.
Because that's what I got to sense what was happening in the worship. There was like cutting ties with something, right? Accusations, lies, cutting ties with something of substance that has anchored itself to our hearts and to our mind. That's what I got to sense what was happening, that there was a release. And that's what I hear when people say, like, oh, there's a release happening, there's a release coming to you. It's almost like a weight tied to a balloon, and you snip the cord, right? You snip the cord. And I don't know if you guys ever noticed this, and it won't show up on camera, but there's this golden balloon that's above me that's untethered. And during I don't have a great point to this, but I feel like the Lord has something on it, and maybe He'll give it to somebody in this room. But as I was talking to Alex earlier today, that balloon just dropped right out of the ceiling, hovered right across the middle of the stage, literally like right here, hovered across, and then on its own just went straight back up again. And I was sitting there just looking at it going, there's nobody moving around, there's no wind happening. And we kind of made a thing of, like, I wonder what the Holy Spirit's trying to say, but I feel like there's a lightness to today. Okay? And so, like I said, I don't want to tell a story about like 10 minutes of actual teaching message, but I feel like this stuff is really, it's so impactful. It's so impactful, and it's so relevant, and it's so relatable that I really want us to get a hold of this. So I talked a lot about Paul, who Paul was. He was a Pharisee among Pharisees, Jew among Jews. But why was his call to the Gentiles so big? Why was it so tough, probably for him to step into? And these are things I believe I'm designed to like bring out a better understanding of. And honestly, as manuscripts get released to the public, this is weird, as they get released to the public, more things are being understood that were concealed for a long time. So one of the things that they've now released to the public that were in the Dead Sea Scrolls is what this group of people called the Essenes referred to the Pharisees as. They were known as the dissenters. Well, you have to break away from something to dissent from it, right? And so there was a firm belief in something, and the Pharisees were deemed as the dissenters. Now, there's priests among the Essenes, because the Essenes, I'm going to give sort of the baseline of this, is the Essenes believed that Scripture was true, that it was prophetic, and that God would reveal things over time, right? A lot of the Pharisees didn't necessarily believe that prophecy was a thing that was meant to be unfurled over time, that it was like eloquent speech, but not practical. So when Isaiah says that the Messiah will come from a virgin, they didn't think it was going to be a literal virgin. So they made all these excuses why it wasn't going to happen, that it was probably just going to be this great man, this general that would rise up. So the Pharisees had broken away and said, look, that's not actually what's going to happen. Like, God isn't God, and he doesn't do the impossible. It's going to come through the practical, right? And had built up this understanding that God really worked in the practical. And he does, right? But he also works in the possible, which is anything that man can't do, right? That happens is a miracle. That's what a miracle is, right? Anything that God does that man can't do. So they didn't follow the logic, didn't really believe in miracles when it came down to it. So the way that they dissented was, hey, Isaiah wasn't quite right. He's not going to come through a virgin. And also, so that was one of the breakaways, right? And these Essenes, they believed a lot of the same things we do, right? Virgin birth, it was going to be spoken through an angel. He was going to be born in Bethlehem. All these other things. Well, the Pharisees didn't really believe in all that, right? They broke away as soon as he wasn't going to come from a virgin. Then they started making up all these other allowances to juggle around what Isaiah and Ezekiel and all those others started speaking about the coming Messiah, right? They had to sort of like push that off to the side. And you know what? We really believe in sort of the first 5 books. And then everything else is just like oral tradition. So what we hear from the Lord, we'll write down. And then it just became this mixed up jumble of things. So anyways, the Pharisees, that name closely resembles the priests of the Essenes. So what they did, if I said, hey, we've got priests in here, right? And I called them the Frankites, all right? The priests were called the Frankites. And you'd say, hey, you know what? I don't really agree with what's going on. I'm going to name our sect over here the Frankiites. So the Essenes, their priests, were something close to the Pharisee, right? So when they broke out, we're the Pharisees. We're the group of the leaders. We're the group of the priests. And we really believe that it's going to be practical, and we should worship sort of like really hone in on the moon. And the moon was the thing that we looked at our calendar. It was the thing. Everything was based on the moon. And the Essenes called them the sons of darkness, right? They're the dissenters, the sons of darkness. So they broke away, made their own priesthood, had their own line of logic and thinking and everything else like that. And the other thing they really believed is you couldn't associate with any, not the Jews, but the Gentiles. You couldn't really associate with Gentiles. Your kids couldn't go to school with them. You couldn't fellowship with them. Basically, there was no association, no intermingling, right? Because it was this unpure blending of societal cultures and things like that. Now, they weren't all bad. And I believe that they fully, whoever the first group of dissenters were, probably knew consciously what they were sort of breaking away from. But the next line, they fully believe they're doing what it takes to please God. They fully believe they're doing everything they could to please God. So we're going to stick to these rules. We're not going to believe in fantasy stuff. It's going to be just like this. And we want approval from God. And this is how it comes. It comes to the structure, right? We can't associate with Gentiles and all this other stuff. So that's who the Pharisees were. Paul being a Pharisee among Pharisees. Now we sort of know who he was. So this revelation of Jesus was the Messiah from a virgin birth was like, whoop, everything, 180, and his thinking and the thought patterns of everything that he had been raised up to be. It was sort of like, oh my gosh, we got it wrong, right? We got it wrong. And he had this fervency of like, you've got to see the fullness of the gospel. You've got to see the birth that I've just had, this revelation of how to look at Scripture that we've been pushing to the side this whole time. So he goes in, like he does every other place. He went to the synagogue first. So he goes to Ephesus. He goes to the synagogue, which at that time, if you've ever pulled off, maybe I even asked you to do it on your phones. I don't have a picture of this. But if you look up Ephesus right now, the main thing you'll see, this huge Colosseum. Then you're going to see this front of an old library, right, where they used to keep all their scrolls and manuscripts and everything else. And that's the main thing. It was called like Philosopher's Square. So all the people that have been raised by Plato, right, in the way of thinking, they all came here, and this was their place. They all congregated around the front of this. So you got the second generation of philosophers down from Plato were all right here, right? So they're here. It's the main place, the library. Right across from it, right? So I'm in Ephesus. Right across from this street, if you can think of that, like right where Bert's sitting, right, would be an open-air synagogue. Open air. So no real building. This place really wasn't built, right? It was just a forum at that time. So when you look at pictures of Ephesus, this stuff really wasn't quite there yet. So open-air synagogue was most likely right there. And where I'm standing, I wish Reed was in here, but it was the school of Tyrannus, Tyrannosaurus Rex. Right? How do we eat the Bible and remember it, right? I don't care if it sounds childish, you'll never forget it, right? He taught the school of dinosaurs, but it was a closed down school. It wasn't used for philosophy at that time. So when it says that Paul opened the school of Tyrannus, literally it was like a condemned building, right? He opened the doors, but he first always went to the synagogue. So what I'm trying to say is he went over here, appealed to them about what his revelation of the Christ was, wasn't rejected, looked at the logic that was going on, and goes, I'm going to set up shop here because the people that are going to be traveling in are either going to go here or they're going to go there. And I'm going to preach from this spot every day for basically 2.5 years. Every afternoon. So when he opened the school, it was everything pouring out of him and from those doors into this square of philosophy, right? Religion and logic. That was the intermingling of what was happening in this place, right? So if you ever think the Bible's boring, right, we just dig a little bit deeper, and I'm trying to instill some passion for what's going on in this place. So now we're at this square. So what is he teaching? Blueprints. You probably can't see it because the board's there. He's teaching blueprints. What about? Right? What about? So, school of Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? Just we're nice and grown up and adult-like. So he's teaching here, and he's teaching these blueprints. But I believe that he goes a lot deeper than the letter, right, to Ephesians, obviously, right? So you're doing something for a couple of years. You're diving deep. You're diving really deep with this school, and you're teaching them, basically looking straight across, going, that is not the full picture. And you can imagine how hard it would be to look across the square, being called to the Gentiles, second-class human beings, and preaching the gospel that is so contrary to everything you grew up. And looking at those people who probably respected you because you were a dude who was man among men, right? The leader of those trying to get people like who he was out of the way, right? To continue on with their thought process. So he is butting up against everything culturally, spiritually, religiously, everything, right? And you have this great temple that's over there. I mean, it is a hotbed. It's a den of lions that the dude's in the middle of, and he is fired up to the point where he is converting and bringing people to the realization who Christ was in such a way that it starts to transform the city, right? That's what we're called to, right? So the Bible's cool. So we get to this point where he starts unveiling the blueprints in Ephesians or Ephesus. And if you spend so much time with somebody, preparing them for something, and then as you go away, anybody who's ever had kids, handing off a note to a babysitter, hey, you walk them around the room, this is what we do, this is how we do it. Here's our philosophy here, we put away there. Here's the diaper, here's the clothes. If you have this emergency, do that. And you write down a bullet list. And as hovering parents or concerned adults, right, you go, hey, do you remember? I'm going to write down a list. Don't forget. Is it as deep as an explanation of everything that we just talked about? No. Is your bullet points. Hey, I just want you to remember this is important. So his letter to the leaders, right, around Ephesus is this book of Ephesians, right? It's a letter. Don't forget these things. If you don't, that's why it's this great expanse of the gospel. All these PowerPoints. Don't forget this one. I think of like, anybody ever seen The Office? PowerPoint. PowerPoint, right? Is it The Office? Yeah. But it's these bullet point lists. Don't forget this. Please don't forget this. This is really important. Don't forget this. Please don't forget. And I just hear this heart cry of him just like pleading, please, please, please. And so what we're going to get is a roadmap, right? These blueprints. And as he goes to different places, it's these little blueprints, right? It's that note you leave. Hey, don't forget this. And so do you know that like Titus was in Ephesians or in Ephesus. So that's another one of those notes he sends out. Timothy was one of the guy he left in charge whenever he left Ephesus. So that's a note to him. Hey, don't forget this. And Corinthians was a place that Paul started, right? So, hey, don't forget this. So these letters are back to say, hey, don't forget these blueprints. So this heartbeat of what is in Paul is scattered throughout these things. And we're just getting these little nuggets, these little notes left behind. So if you go to Ephesians 6, we're still in Ephesians. Oh, not yet, Tina. I don't have anything to pick on you about, so that's as good as I can do right now. Okay, so I've got this list, right? And I want to give you this blueprint of what Paul talks about. And now often we refer to this like, hey, we make this analogy. There's no need to give the devil more credit than he's got, and I'm certainly not going to give him any more credit, right? I'm going to undermine the simplicity of how he operates, though. And if you don't think it's simple, maybe I'll have an opportunity to change your mind. Okay? So I got 5 things. I think if you can understand these 5 things, we can sort of understand how he operates. So the first one is going to be devil. I'm going to make you write some notes if you want to, if you don't have to. Whatever. 2, wiles. 3, stronghold. Stronghold. 4, going to be oppression. And the last one is going to be deception. Okay. So I think this is what Paul keeps outlining over and over in all of his letters. Like his leftover notes is, hey, don't forget this. These things are prevalent throughout the different letters that he writes. And like I said, it's not different. It's not coming from a different source. This is from the same understanding, the same revelation of who the Messiah was, what we're up against, and basically how we come to this realization that we have full authority to knock down the strongholds. Okay, so the first one, now Tina, would be Ephesians 6:11, right? So from Ephesians, we'll go to 11. I think it's put on the full armor of God so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. Okay? 2 big ones, schemes and devil. Schemes or wiles. I don't use wiles, right? King James may use wiles, but this is the best sort of translation of how some of this stuff looks as wiles. This is the basis of how he operates is very simplistic in its nature. Very, very simplistic in its nature. So we get down to devil, all right? The way that, we'll go to the next slide. The devil, the way it's written, and I can't type in Greek, nor can I write Greek, right? Is Ya, Alos. Maybe I misspelled that when I sent it to you. Diabolos. Okay, so the first one, dia, it's broken apart, right? All these things are, how do I put this? It's when they're conjoined, they mean multiple things, but they're the basis of these words in Greek. These are all important. So this is how they understood words, right? Just because we don't do things like this doesn't mean that we have the full understanding. We'll look at a word and we don't know the roots to it. I remember I took Latin, things like, oh, it's going to help me with all these roots. Well, nobody else uses roots to anything, right? But they did. So when they were speaking a word, it came with all of these, I wouldn't say hidden meanings, but it was like layered understandings of things, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you have the first one and the second one. So dia, I'm going to go to this one first. Okay. So Satan wasn't a title, or devil wasn't just a title, it was a job description, right? It meant he was a slanderer, he was an accuser. That was his job description. And if we don't understand that about Satan or devil, we're missing the baseline of what they understood about him. Okay, so the balos came from balo, right? Just take away the O or the S. Came from balo, and it means to throw something like a rocker ball. It means to throw something like a rocker ball and to throw it repetitively, right? The dia means to penetrate fully from one side all the way through to the other side. So if he is the accuser, he will throw accusations after accusations after accusations after accusation till it penetrates from one side all the way through to the next. That is his job description. He throws accusations at what, though? It's the mind. This is how it's so relatable. These lies, these accusations, I'm going to keep throwing them at them. I'm going to keep throwing it at you. I'm going to keep throwing it at you. And not only will I speak, I'm standing in the spot and say, not only will I speak these accusations and lies, but I will change circumstances around. I will create situations to reinforce these same lies. So the job description of Satan is this accuser who repetitively throws things at you to the point in which I'm going to penetrate all the way from the front to the back, all the way through. And if it's through the mind, I'm going to go all the way from one side all the way through to the job is accomplished. So this is the path in which the devil operates. And no matter what situation we're in, we're under, we can sort of tell at what layer, because these are layers in which he operates. Right? So ball, this is the thrower one, right? Ball, throw. Or accusations, right? And this is penetrate. All the way through from one side to the next. And I said this part's going to be really quick, right? We all sort of understand this. It's relatable because we're all under the constant accusations. Okay? Because the thing is, if I can affect the mind, I can affect your emotions. And the way that the way that you express your emotions, right, it can be projected on other people. So if I take the mind, the mind controls everything, right? For this conversation, the mind controls everything. So if the mind controls your emotions, I say sometimes when I argue with my wife, her emotions control her mind. But honestly, it's the thing, if your mind basically relinquishes control of something, your emotions can run wild, right? So stick with me here. I believe it's your mind who holds holds the firm ground. And when that gives up ground, it leaves allowances for other things to start controlling you, right? When you start to believe something, right, you allow it to affect the way that you do everything, right? So it controls your, if you believe you're not good enough, you don't have self-esteem, which means you will project a lack of self-esteem onto everybody that you encounter, which affects them and their nature, their calling, their everything, right? And that's the same way that God operates too. They know that this battle is over this. Why do you have to constantly renew the mind? Why are you called as husbands to wash your wife in the word? It's the truth of the matter. Constantly washing your bride in the truth is what you're called to. Because that's what Christ is called to over the body. Constantly fighting this. This is step one, these accusations. We're doing some remodeling at our house and giving a small hammer to Gwen, a little bit larger one to read, and to watch her try her hardest to hit the wall, right? And he keeps going, Dad, it's not working. Just keep hitting it. Dad, it's not working. Just keep going at it. I'm seeing the dimple. And drywall is not that hard, but right, if you keep working, I know that what can be accomplished through these small blows, right? And she finally breaks through, and she's all excited and stuff like that. But I was sitting there going, oh, yeah, that's about right, you know? All right, so we got the first one. It's good. Wiles. I'll go to that slide. Again, I cannot write in Greek, nor can I type in Greek. So if you're going to look this up, the other thing you're going to find is this. Okay? So Greek's the New Testament. That's what Paul writes in. But over time, just like the English language, the way things are spelled, written, typed out in Greek changes. So if you can't find this, look a little bit harder. Look a little bit differently. So stick with me here. I don't want to get so legalistic on this, right? But wiles. It's made up of a couple of different things. Metadosis, it's meta and otis, okay? So otis is the same word for odometer, right? The same base word for odometer. It is the word for road, right? Yeah. O-D-O-S equals road. Odometer, it's the distance, right? And meta speaks to, or actually it's with. So meta equals with. Now, the thing I want to point out about this isn't all roads. It's not plural roads, it's road. It means to operate with a single avenue so that you do not fall prey, right, to the schemes. I'm going to put that. Ephesians 6:11, put on the full armor, guys, so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. We think of that as plural. It's all these lies trying to travel down one singular road. So when I say he's very basic in his approach, he is the accuser. That is his job description, to throw things at you for the single purpose of getting to some point. And we've already talked about it. It's the mind. So this the singular road to get to a destination. You don't build a road to nowhere. Well, some would say our government does, right? Right? Every taxpayer feels like you maybe are building a road to nowhere sometimes. But there's a purpose for building a road, right? You don't just start building a road just to go to a middle of a field because you have no purpose for that field. You have a purpose for putting in a road, right? So I'm just trying to describe the revelation that Paul is trying to lay out. Satan, schemes of the devil, these singular roads that he tries to cut to get to the mind, right? We're going to get to strongholds, okay? Occupo is the word. So the next one, Tina. Occupo. Okay? So if we go to 2 Corinthians 10:4, and then we can go back to occupo, right? Occupo. I think that's how it's spelled. Yeah, occupo. Again, not the most Greek that I really know how it's spoken is my big fat Greek wedding, so I can't. But I'm trying to learn, though, right? So 2 Corinthians 10:4, the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. Okay? On the contrary, they have been given divine power to demolish strongholds. This is that word. There's two implied meanings in this. Okay, the first implied meaning of this stronghold word is this. It's a prison in which something, it's a prison. And this is something that keeps you behind bars. It keeps you behind bars. Now, the unique thing about prisons, and a lot of times the way they position them, is when you could look out the bars, you could actually view freedom. Mm-hmm. I've been to Alcatraz before. You can see this whole city. You can see the water. You can see people enjoying, right, the benefits of freedom. You can hear it. I haven't spent time there, right? But I can only imagine the frustration that it builds up. Maybe it's the sense of hope they were trying to instill, or actually more oppression they were trying to put in when they put prisons where they did. Back where I'm from, Jacksonville, they had this like high rise, and it's a high rise prison, so you can see the whole city, right? So when you're in there, in the heart of the city, you can drive past, interstates, downtown, go right next to it. I kind of forgot about it till this moment. But this ability to see freedom from the place that you're standing in. Have you ever felt like I was called, I was destined for this thing, I was a good singer, but these lies that I got trapped in, I'm not actually good at it, and you're viewing somebody who is equally talented accomplishing the things you felt like you were supposed to? There's your prison. I was supposed to be doing that. Man, I thought that's what I was always going to do. It's a stronghold, right? I'm trying to get these implied meanings of what's going through. Okay. So, the second implied meaning is describe a fortress or a castle. Now, a castle keeps people on the outside, doesn't let them in. All right? For all of those introverts, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Feels very cozy, feels very protected inside that. But we can build these things up. Now, for anybody in a relationship, I want to say everybody raise your hands, but everybody's in a relationship. It's like it's a no-brainer. You never ask a question you don't know the answer to, right? So, for any married couple, I'd say this happens. We were married, okay? For this example, you've got the hair. It's all right, so I can visualize a little bit. And we've been talking about this certain particular thing in your life. You're like, can't receive it, can't receive it, can't receive it, right? And then, Frankie comes along and is like, hey, this thing, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, the first time I've ever heard it, right? Right? We can build fortresses, strongholds that keep us from receiving the truth, right? Now, where did that come from? Right? A lot of times, these strongholds are put into place by lies. Now, it doesn't mean that it's from everywhere, and this is how this works in this example. Let's say that, yes, I'm designed to receive from you, and I build up this stronghold, and I really want to grab those tissue boxes, but I build up this wall, right? And all you're trying to do is hand me apples. And the reason why I'm trying to do this is so we're not picking on cleanliness or personal habits or anything else. We can apply this how we need to apply it. But you're trying to offer me apples, and I'm like, you know what? I never Never liked apples. Like, you never tried apples. Like, yeah, but I know, but the shape of them, right, and the color and everything else, I know I'm not going to like it. No, I just know, right? And it has nothing to do with the apples. It has to do with something that's come in between us that doesn't allow me to receive what I'm supposed to be receiving, the delicious fruit that God made, right? But Frank comes and goes, hey, I want to offer you these apples. And this stronghold, this wall is right here. It's not a perfect circle around me where I can't receive it from anybody. It's just right here. And all Frank does is he walks right here and goes, hey, you want an apple? Like, dude, I've never seen an apple like this. Okay. And you're like personally offended by this. And maybe you help build a little stone to that wall. Right? Instead of saying, hey, the way I've been trying to offer it is this way, you need to walk around this section. I need to help offer apples in such a way that John can receive it. There's your strongholds. Now, I can have strongholds in certain areas of my life and have no strongholds over here. Right? For whatever, I'm not staring at you for a reason. I just say, hey, you're receiving it, so I'm looking at you, right? The thing is, we can have strongholds in certain areas of life. I am not a wall blocked off intellectually to everything. Certain things I am, all right? Past wounds, hurts, personal relationships. I could have problems with my finances, and somebody could come up to me who has terrible history in finances. And I'd be like, there's no way I'm going to listen to you because of this X, Y, and Z. It doesn't mean it's a good nugget. It just means that potentially they have created a situation in which other people can't receive from them. Right? Anyways, I just want to describe strongholds could be this. They could either be a prison, fortress, or a castle. So one locks you away from the freedom you're designed to experience. The other one keeps people out, right? And so you can't receive it. And a castle is a place of authority. Big one right here. Boom. Okay, now oppression. Let's get to that one. So if we go to Acts 10, let's go to oppression first, okay? This is another one of those things. The Greek changes over time. So stick with me here. Don't get so locked in to this one. So kata dynestio, whatever. Kata, dyna, theo. Okay? The real thing I want to point out is here. Kata is a big one. Dynastio, right, is also the root for dynamo. Dynamite. Dynamo is used to express the full weight of the full power of an advancing army. It was so strong, it was so impressive, it was almost like an act of God. And the only thing equal to the force of an act of God was the force of an entire army moving forward. All right, so dynamo would be the next one. Or dunamis, which is also dynamo, but dunamis is the second one. I know we're getting kind of tiny here. We'll get to it, okay? So Acts 10:38. You know of Jesus of Nazareth, how God anointed him with the Holy Spirit and with power, and how he went about doing good and healing all those who were oppressed, for God was with him. Okay. This word oppression, the kata, okay. Kata means something that is subjugated or dominating. Something that is subjugating or dominating. So something that has full power is fully pressing down on somebody. On a people group, on a mind, subjugating it, basically saying like, I will control you, your actions, and tell you your value system. Like a king comes in and says, these are the rules, This is what we value as a culture. And this is going to be how you walk out that value system, right? I'm the king, you serve me, this is what you do. So to get you to function in this relationship, I have to demean you so you see no value in yourself, and the only value you get is from me and following my rules. So Jesus was, okay, you know Jesus of Nazareth. We'll go back to the Acts 10:38. How God anointed him with the Holy Spirit and with power, right? And how he went about doing good, healing all those who were oppressed. People that were subjugated, right, by the devil, the accuser who kept throwing things at people, these lies, until it penetrated all the way through their mind, from the front to the back. Healing all those who were oppressed by the devil. For God was with him. Is God with us? Okay. Now, make sure I get this right. It also, and I didn't write this down, but in the mix of this, sorry, I'm really trying to get this one right. Oh, yeah. Let's go to that kata, the long word, oppression. Kata, I forgot to write this one, that big long word is the same as a tyrant or a wicked king. That's oppression. It's the same word as tyrant or a wicked king. It's made up of kata, the short one, something as subjugating or dominating, and that dunamis with power. So, I'm going to accuse you down a road to build strongholds, to occupy as a tyrant, wicked king, this castle, to get to this point. Right? So the deception part of it, let's go to deception. Should have had these bigger. I'm playing. We got it. I'm just playing. Yeah, I went over my 10 minutes. Okay, so the verse that comes after this, we've got one. I'm going to give you two different versions of it. NASB, 2 Corinthians 2:11. So that no advantage would be taken of us by Satan, right? The accuser who penetrates. For we are not ignorant of his schemes or devices, his wiles. ESV says, so that we would not be outwitted by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his designs. Now, devices speaks to this, and we're in relation to deception. So devices or deception, right? But I'm going to say devices. Schemes, wiles, they're all sort of related. But this word, track with me here, is nuos. And that literally means brain. Okay? The brain or the mind is what it literally translates into. But in this thing, it's 2 Corinthians, they switched the tense. Okay? They switched the tense. It's very purposeful in this. But it means a jumbled mind. The end goal for deception is to create a jumbled mind, scrambled eggs, creating a situation in which you don't know up from down, left from right. You don't have the ability any further to recognize truth from a lie. So once I accuse you to the point, going down the singular road of accusations, creating strongholds that I can live in, as the tyrant king, what I will do from that place of authority is create a scrambled mind in which you can no longer perceive right or wrong. And so the power that Christ gives is to release people from this oppressive king. That's it. That's the blueprint. That's what Paul outlines all over the place. But if we don't know some Greek, right, we inherently sort of know, right, that he accuses us time and time and time and time again with these lies. It's so relatable. We're not advanced to have this old language. Paul was talking about this back then. This is his revelation of the gospel. This is his revelation, right, of what the spiritual warfare was. It wasn't, we're not against flesh and blood, powers and principalities. They come down this singular road of accusations, doing the will of their Father, spreading lies, deception over and over and over and over and over and over again until they break the mind down, to subjugate it to the lies that Satan has for you so that you won't walk in your purpose anymore. Now, I think this actually came up in the Women of the Ark probably a few weeks ago. I want to make the connection between the two of these things. Kyla opened up a can of worms, and it was about deception. What lie had been spoken that had taken root to make a fortress in which it dictated the emotions and the perception that she had about who she was? And I think it was 6th grade, so that'd be 12, 13 years old, right? That age where you're trying to sort of figure out what to do with yourself. In the beginning stages, I haven't met too many kind 13-year-old girls in that middle school sort of situation. It is notorious for being a breeding ground, right, for those who pass on the lies they've been given about themselves on to other people. Right? So it's no longer the lies that Kyla was receiving. It's also she's getting some help from situations pouring into that. And I kind of understand this is the weight of parents saying what's about to happen. So these lies start coming in, and she goes for a run, and she's like, I had to use an inhaler because I had asthma. And from that moment, the lie got stuck into me that I'm not good at this, and I don't like it. This is not who I am. And so she became, I'm not athletic, I'm not great. All these things that started to shape the perception of who she was, not knowing that this is something she's called to. Now, she just picked up running. And it was tough, but she was battling through that whole, I'm not designed to do this. But God, why are you asking me to run? You know, sorry, I'm talking about a thing that I know that Satan has dug in for years against my wife. So bear with me here. God, why would you touch on that thing that's so sensitive? Don't you know that's the point of vulnerability? And this is him being a good dad. Is going like, basically, I've never created you like that. That never came from me. And I'm trying to show you again what you were created for. So it's this battle over the mind. They're both, Satan and God are both after territory, right? And it's all up here. God's a jealous God. He's not envious, but he's jealous, right? And I'm going to describe the difference between that two. Jealousy is something you actually claim ownership and have a right to. God calls us not to be envious, right, of our neighbor's things. Something I don't have a right to. Satan is envious. God's jealous. right? They're both battling for the same thing. But she starts to run now, and she's like, I realize actually I love it. But when it has a hard day, I'm 13, and I'm not supposed to be doing this. That's a lot of years of lies being piled onto that thing. Just years and years and years. And don't tell me another 13-year-old girl who was in a different physical state running next to her didn't contribute to that lie that she was already trying to figure out, is this really a lie or is this true? And looking and going, man, you're not struggling the way that I am. It makes sense. I'm not made to do this. Didn't even have to have somebody tell her that you're no good or you can't do this, you're not created for it. How many women have stepped into, I've never seen a happy woman shopping for a bathing suit. Never. Never, right? It's comparison. I'm not created for this thing that everybody else is created to fit into, right? Well, guess what? Bathing suits come off an assembly line and nothing is fitting, right, perfectly because, look, you're wearing stuff that should be tailored if you want it to fit correctly. So nothing off the shelf is going to fit you perfectly unless you just happen to be that same size as that mannequin they dressed it on, right? That's not the point, though. But we all get in these situational positions in which the lies that he's been speaking to us are confirmed by our environment, right? We choose whether or not to accept the lie that we've been given by our situational pressures. So when we talk about he accuses us year after year, moment after moment, we're not created, we're not designed, right? We're not fitted. We were never built for this thing. Do you ever wonder like how insecure he has to be? Because essentially that's probably what you're designed and created to be to thwart everything that he's trying to do. It makes no sense to me that he would attack something that has no power to defeat what he wants to do. It makes no sense to me. He spends all his effort trying to undermine the very thing that could subjugate him and put him in his place. He spends all his time on that. So you think about how you have felt a lack of self-worth, to be ill-created for the situation that you're in, and just think about, is it a situation that has been brought alongside to help build up that lie he's been speaking to you all this time? And I'd say probably. Now, what do we do with all this stuff? 2 Corinthians 10:5. We are destroying arguments and all arrogance raised up against the knowledge of God, and we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. Hell yes, we are. Hell yes, we are. We are designed to destroy arguments and all arrogance raised up against the knowledge of God. Everything that comes in at this level, we are designed to destroy every argument that comes up and butts up against the truth in this situation. And we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. You know what captivity meant? We're taking every thought captive. This word, and I didn't write it down, and I'm pretty sure Lee's taught on it before, but taking something captive actually meant, right? If I have somebody in front of me, it was a Roman soldier taking captive a prisoner, and the way that they would do it was they'd put their tip of the point of their sword in the middle of their back. And it was so sharp that if they did this from a point of standing still, that they could run it all the way through a person. It was designed for that. So taking somebody captive literally meant pointing the tip of the spear, the tip of the sword, in the middle of their back and walking them forward. You didn't have a choice. You either you died or you went along with the game, right? So taking every thought captive is basically putting that thought in front of you, right? And if you don't intend to act on it, you don't have authority. If you don't intend to act on it, you're not actually, you're just you're playing, well, here's my sword of the Spirit. Here you go, get back. Get back. But if I have all authority to take it captive to the obedience of Christ, you will submit to the truth that God's spoken to me. You will do it. And here's the weird thing, right? I want that sword to be really long so I'm not close to the thought. You know what I mean? I don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, right? Because this icky gooiness is going to get all over me if I get close to that lie. If I get close to it, it somehow has power or authority over me. Well, guess what? I don't really have it if I'm scared of being close to it. I want to get up and I want to smell it and be like, yeah, you smell like death. Come on, keep moving. And you know what that word is when it talks about a Roman sword, the sword of the Spirit? You ever seen pictures of the big, long Roman swords? Okay, not that word. That's not what it is. That word actually it looks like a dagger. So taking it captive, you're right next to it. You're close combat, right? You can try to, do the Chinese like assassin thing and throw it and hit it from across the room, right? It's what I want it to be, but what it is I'm going to get real close to you. We're going to walk. We're going to take a walk, right? And we're going to go somewhere. I want to put you in your place. So, Alex, you wouldn't mind coming up. I believe that we're dealing with strongholds. I believe we're dealing with lies, and I believe this is the day for freedom. I believe it's cutting loose of these things that have been built up in our mind, strongholds, to keep us in prison for what we're called to, and two, from keeping people out in truth. I'm going to pray for you. I just want to give it a moment because I know everyone is in this faith. I know everybody is. I certainly have. I just didn't feel like I could get through this. But it's close enough to home. So, if you want to release from that, maybe there's the people. If you feel like you are there, you get released from it, it doesn't matter. It is the opportunity. Strike while the iron's hot, right? We know what it is. We know where it's at. We call it out for what it is. Submission to God. Know that there's power in everything that comes against the word can take it.